so crazy. Ooh, we're getting real low on our action skill. Okay, then. Holy shit, that was a 3 million tech. Yo guys, what is up? Max on a Borderlands 4 video, and today we're going over my updated guide to Half-Life Harlowe. This is a status effect Harlowe build that with some new tech, we are able to one-shot every single boss in the game and do like multiple million rad dots. It's absolutely ridiculous. This build like one-shots bosses across the screen, as you saw in the little clip. Bosses don't even need to be like close to each other for them to get this shared status effects, which are doing millions of damage and just killing everything. It's great at mobbing, it's great at bossing, and with this new tech, it's genuinely one of Harlow's strongest builds. Hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. Let's get right into it. So if you didn't watch the original Half-Life Harlowe build, this build is taking advantage of the Scientist class mod. You need the Scientist class mod for this build to function. The Scientist class mod reads whenever Harlowe shocks an enemy, she automatically entangles and irradiates that enemy. Whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, electric arcs shoot out from that enemy at other nearby enemies. Now, Harlowe has a lot of scaling for radiation damage. She doesn't have a lot of scaling for shock damage. However, shock weapons can roll some of the highest dot values in the game. So basically, what we're doing with this build in general is we're using shock stelliums, which roll high shock dots, to then proc a subsequent rad dot on enemies, and that rad dot will get all of our scaling again and proc for millions. So we're doing like 400, 500k shock dots on this build, but our rad dots are going to be doing millions of damage. The next piece to this build is the primed potency Maliwan enhancement. This reads that guns with Maliwan licensed parts have a 100% status effect chance on the first bullet after reload. This allows us, whenever we reload and then shoot our stelliums, to have a 100% status effect chance. So we are not relying on RNG for big damage. We will always get a huge status effect proc. And the new tech that we're adding to this build, this was told to me by Captain Fail in my Twitch chat, is that energy discs on stelliums. If you did not know, I made a video on the like energy disc Jacobs interaction that was like basically one-shotting the screen, kind of like a Jacobs kickballer, but it wasn't dealing damage to you. This has now been fixed. It is nerfed. It no longer just infinitely kills bosses. However, the energy disc still inherits the dot damage of the stellium, and it can hit multiple times. And it works with primed potency. So the disc can hit a boss multiple times and proc the status effect and stack it, and that one disc is going to grab all of our amp damage increases. It's going to have a 100% status effect chance, and then when we shoot this disc at an enemy, we get guaranteed status effect procs, and that disc can bounce. It hits like prior to the nerf, it would hit like hundreds of times. Now it hits like 2 to 3 times, but it can multi-hit bosses. It's very, very consistent, but we basically just shoot an energy disc on the stellium and you'll one-tap literally everything in the game. Note that you do not need an energy disc, but it is the highest damage option. You could, prior to this, basically just use a high shock dot stellium and still one-tap a lot of bosses, but this is just way stronger and way more consistent and proccing way higher dots. To give you an idea of the difference, with this stellium, with an energy disc, I've been able to proc a 3 million radiation dot, and with the like normal stelliums, I'm able to proc like 300 to 400k radiation dots. So it is magnitude stronger in terms of like boss one-shots. Now let's go over our skill tree, which has also changed since the most recent update. We're going to be using action at a distance. If you're wondering how we're killing like enemies across the screen, basically, it's this skill. I don't have a 5 out of 10 or a 10 out of 5 action at a distance. That would be sick, but this will allow you, whenever you proc a status effect to an enemy, you can guarantee proc that status effect to other entangled enemies. This is how we're getting crazy status effect share, as well as you can get a Maliwan enhancement to spread status effects. Action at distance is stronger, though, because it does not care about distance. As long as they're entangled, they'll share that damage. Neutron Decay is going to give us stacking gun damage whenever we're dealing radiation damage. This is up all the time on the build. One thing that's really important to understand how to scale a dot build properly is DoT scale off of the damage on the hit. So if we're hitting harder with our guns, we are going to be dealing bigger DoT values. And so neutron decay is massive for that. We're also going to be using creative overflow for even more gun damage, more DoT damage. Confirmative reality as just an additional way to get some of our action skill cooldown back. And then a big difference on this build, which is spiking up our damage, is we're going far left. Decoherence, as I recently discovered, is literally just like Harlow's best skill. It is a 25% multiplier to all of her damage to entangled enemies. It's just huge returns from this skill. I also put some points into latent charge for the extra bonus damage whenever we have overshield. We have a lot of overshield up on this build. Then we're going over to the right side to get excited state for the extra crit damage. I put 1 accretion for a little bit of lifesteal and distribution function. Whenever we damage enemies, we're going to get shield restore. This is based off of damage dealt. We're dealing millions of damage, so we're going to constantly get overshield. That constant overshield will give us latent charge to give us tons of bonus damage. Note that I did mess around with gamma ray burst for this build as another source of bonus radiation damage. This seemed to like bug out our build slightly, where it was, instead of adding bonus radiation damage, I think it was converting our weapon to radiation damage. I just wasn't getting the same amount of damage on gamma ray burst. Definitely something I got to mess around with more, but for this particular setup, I tried with and without this, and it was definitely better without. And then for the red tree, we can get fuzzy math for the status effect chance. Come over here for elementary for more status effect damage and element damage. Great red dot gives us more status effect duration, so we get more procs off of our status effects. And then we've got a little bit into enriched for some extra radiation damage. The old build of Harlowe had more points into Poison Sun for more radiation damage and Chain Reactor for the bonus radiation damage dealt. I do think we just get more damage out going this left side, so that's why we've updated the build for that. For our weapons, I would hold on to 1 non-elemental weapon just in case you come across like a radiation elemental eater. Spread launcher is great for that. And then for like the main weapons we're using, for mobbing, I'm mainly just using this weapon, a 26k shock dot stellium with the Jacob's accessory with energy disc. This is definitely hard to come across though. I will give out a version of this to the Discord if you're looking for it, so they'll be circulating this in the Discord, as well as just any sort of high shock dot stelliums are great. The highest possible roll that they can go is 33.9k, which this one has. The higher the shock dot, the better. Remember that we don't need like a radiation dot or radiation on the guns because we're going to get those guaranteed radiation procs if we shock enemies. For our Repkit, I've got a triple bypass with amp. Note for boss one-shots, you can get away with, or what I was using was just an amp overshield. Overshield gives us guaranteed shock or bonus shock with a Watts for dinner. So for bossing, I was using amp overshield, and then for mobbing, I just like a triple bypass with the amp roll. We don't have great uptime on Halo, so triple bypass helps with caffeine. We're going to be using a crit knife. Crit knife just got fixed and buffed at the same time. Note that none of my kills were really using this. However, the crit knife is now 30% crit chance additive, but it stacks with itself. So you can throw 3 crit knives at an enemy and you'll get 90% crit chance. Credit to Lazy Data for the find on that. But now you can just use crit knives and get guaranteed crits with your dots, which is insane. For the scientist, you'd probably want like all damage dealt here. As many points into the shared dot as you can. Mine's an all-right scientist. Note that it's really helpful to get an extra point into ripple effect so that you always have entangled enemies to proc these shared status effects with action at a distance. For our shield, I'm using a Watts for dinner with amp. Right now, the Origo boss is the guaranteed or like the big encore. If you're looking for an amp Watts for dinner, now is the best time to farm for that. Amp and siphon is also fantastic. And then for your enhancement, the most important thing is that you get primed potency for a 100% status effect chance on your first bullet after reload. This is needed for bossing. Otherwise, you're going to be at the whims of RNG if you proc a status effect or not. And then you can also get transfuser on this so that whenever you get a kill with Maliwan guns, that status effect is spread. Not super needed, honestly, on the build, as long as you have some points into action at a distance, but it is very helpful. It's nice. For our specializations, we're going to be using Riddle You This. This gives us more gun damage. More gun damage is more dot damage for us. We're also using Contamination for extra status effect stacking chance in case you don't have a potency or don't get a reload off. One shot, one kill is huge on this build. Most of the time, we're one-tapping enemies, sometimes before the dot even goes, with how much damage we've got. And so this just gives us more damage for our next shot to proc even bigger dots. And then I use Now with Caffeine to give us an extra action skill cooldown rate, so that we can, when our action skill goes down, our halo goes down, we can just triple bypass that right back up. For our firmware, we're rocking 3 high caliber. High caliber with stelliums is basically like double damage because they can just double hit. Plus the gun damage on it is multiplicative, so that's fantastic. I've also got Heating Up for the 20% gun reload speed, just huge quality of life because we're reloading after every kill. And then I had Airstrike on for the extra splash radius, more quality of life. It's going to be easier to hit enemies with the double hit from the stellium. Technically, you could go God Killer here for the 10% more damage. That would also be fantastic. If you're just focusing on bossing, I would go for the God Killer. If you're focusing more on mobbing, I'd use Airstrike. Can't go wrong with either. Guys, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.